The three Japanese women had a lot of trauma in between them. They had irreconcilable differences that could not be talked out. The problem was the three women, they were highly charged in terms of emotions. They all had a ton of time and a lot of deep-rooted hatred for one another. They felt like everyone around them was constantly comparing the three of them. Yeah, they run in the same circles, they know all the same people, but still, why do they have to constantly be in competition? So let me give you a drama breakdown. Masumi hates Miyuki. Masumi judges Miyuki for being a bad mom. Masumi feels like she's a good mom. Why can't Miyuki be a good mom? And she hated the fact that Miyuki copied every little thing that Masumi did. Masumi would write a book. Well, guess who comes and becomes an author? Miyuki. And all of this would eventually lead to a lawsuit. Then enter into the dynamic Kanai. She hated Miyuki too. They both hate Miyuki, but not for the same reason, for a deeper one, for love. Kanai had a love interest who wanted to interview Miyuki for a book that he was writing. That would mean that he would be spending a ton of time talking to Miyuki, working closely with Miyuki, being in Miyuki's company. And Kanai was stressed because everyone she talked to would say, "Oh, Miyuki? Yeah, she's got this interesting aura. She almost has a way of enchanting people. She's so alluring, she could quietly seduce just about anyone before they even know what's happening." And Kanai was worried that skank, Miyuki, would seduce her love interest. And her whole problem with this setup was, if this man, her love interest, was going to write a book on female serial killers, why couldn't he just have written it on her? Today, we are talking about Japan's 3 most notorious female serial killers and how they all end up despising each other in prison. Out of the 3, 2 of them are almost identical carbon copies of one another. It's kind of scary. They're not copycat killers. They just had a similar look, similar seduction pattern, similar MO, similar time frame of crimes, and they would absolutely hate each other's guts in prison because of a man. And by the end of this story, one of the serial killers would face a very bizarre death behind prison bars. We would like to thank today's sponsors who have made it possible for Rotten Mango to support Share Our Strength. Right now, over 9 million children in America live in households that experience hunger, food insecurity, and lack of access to an affordable, nutritious diet. Share Our Strength focuses on providing resources for families and tackling the root causes of hunger. This episode's partnerships have also made it possible to support Rotten Mango's growing team of dedicated researchers, translators, while we focus on shedding light on stories from all over the world. We'd also like to thank you for your continued support as we work on our mission to be worthy advocates of these causes. As always, full show notes are available at rottenmangopodcast.com. We had our wonderful Japanese researchers help with the gathering of the data on this case. But as always with international cases, or really any case at all, if anything is lost in translation, miscommunicated, or if there's any additional information you have on this one, let us know in the comments. With that being said, let's get started. There was a blog in Japan. Like a Tumblr, a blog, Notorious, for being unhinged. That's what the blog is known for. The blog would talk about all sorts of things. The poster would write about mundane things like what they ate for breakfast, what's on their mind, what are they thinking about. They would go on these deep, emotional, long tangents about bread. The poster would talk about where she lived. They would have to import all of their bread. They always got it from the same company, Yamazaki Baking Company. Each slice of bread was 163 calories and it would arrive 4 days before the expiration date. And if they were lucky, sometimes it would arrive 5 days before the expiration date. Now, she would go on to say, if you open the bread right at the time that you get it and you eat it, it's delicious. It's such a strong, rich flavor. It's fluffy. But by the second day, it's stale, it's disgusting. And it's not 1 or 2 pieces of bread that's imported, it's a whole loaf. So if it doesn't taste good, what do you do with the rest of the loaf? She felt very distraught about it. She felt very passionate about it. She would write, if the time to eat it without toasting it is a day, isn't that unacceptable? The blog would go in depth on bread, breakfast food items, but also include heated discussions of gender equality. The poster would write in one blog entry, what I feel now after being where I am is that women are certainly no match for men. Outside of giving birth, there's nothing men can't do. If a man puts his mind to it, he can rise to the top of anything, no matter what it is. And because women and children and men are so vastly different creatures, there can't be anything like equality. I developed an aversion to feminism, and nothing has changed since. My life has always been supported by men. A lot of people thought this is kind of weird. A few things about this particular blog post struck people as a little hypocritical, if you will. First of all, it was written from prison by someone on death row. And second of all, it's written by a female serial killer who seduced, manipulated, and killed men for her own personal gain. Masumi killed people with curry. There was this giant summer festival happening in Japan where the whole town was going to be in attendance.
The blog is written by Masumi?
No, somebody else. We're getting into the drama. You know that meme that's like the girls are fighting? I saw a couple people on Twitter refer to this case as the girls are fighting. So I got to introduce you to all the girls, I guess. Masumi was going to a summer festival in her local town, and it's supposed to be like a really fun time. It's supposed to be the 1 or 2 days that everybody forgets about work and school and they just focus on food-related activities and community. Or at least that's the plan, right? And there was this giant pot of curry at the event that everyone is just like flocking towards. It's hot, it's steamy, which honestly feels like the last thing that you want to eat on a hot summer day. But the smell that is emanating out of that giant pot of curry, it smelled so freaking delicious. And it looked like the pot of curry had just arrived. So people start lining up, and this 40-ish-year-old woman starts filling up bowls of hot, steaming curry to feed people. And within minutes, everybody is doubled over, vomiting into the grass. Some of them, like, think of your local summer festival. Some of them are laying on the grass on their backs. Others are in a fetal position with all of these stomach spasms. 4 people would die from eating that curry. And the woman that brought the curry, people said she was just walking around watching people being tortured by her food poisoning like a little bear. It was weird. She was so focused. Police would test the curry pot, and there was 1,000 grams of arsenic cooked into the curry. That is enough arsenic to kill 100 people. 4 people died, and 2 of the victims were children. 63 people were sick for weeks. Masumi was labeled a mass murderer, rightfully so, and was thrown into prison. And for a while, she's okay with it. She is the most notorious female serial killer of Japan, and she kept herself in prison. She wrote a book, she made friends, she would read books, until another female serial killer was sentenced in Japan. And the whole nation is talking about this new female serial killer. And everyone just kept comparing her to Masumi because, I don't know, they're both female serial killers. That's like how a lot of killers get compared to Ted Bundy. And Masumi is kind of getting annoyed. She felt like the only similarity that these two shared is that we're both women and we're both killers. We are not the same. And it's actually insulting for people to be comparing the two of them. She's nothing like this new killer, Miyuki. Masumi, convicted mass murderer, would file a civil lawsuit in Tokyo seeking close to $100,000 in emotional distress damages. She was suing 50 different publications, demanding money for emotional distress. The emotional distress that she suffered from being compared to another serial killer.
Like, she thinks she's not that evil, or she thinks she's better than that person?
She thinks she's above them. She hated Miyuki, and there was another serial killer that she often got compared to, Kanai. And she said, we're not the same. Miyuki and Kanai, they used seduction to kill. They slept with their victims. They used their bodies. Masumi was above that. She had way too much class and self-respect to be compared to these, honestly.
Wow.
This is how the girls start fighting. But I do have to give you a lot of background information before we get there. Masumi is not as relevant to the prison drama, but she does kind of kickstart it. The other 2 female serial killers, Miyuki and Kanai, they have so much beef. Like, it's so bizarre. And they're basically carbon copies of one another. I don't think I've ever covered a case like this before. I feel like we've done cases where serial killers are inspired by each other. There's a copycat killer or anything like that, or maybe some elements are similar. These 2, they're 1 year apart in age. They committed their crimes around the same time. They were even apprehended just a few months apart from one another. They both staged their kills to resemble self-exits, and they were both on death row with prison blogs. They updated blogs from prison.
How do they do that? They got a computer?
They send it to someone who has a computer. They send letters to someone who's going to post it. People called them the poisonous woman of the East and the West. And it's pretty difficult to talk about one without drawing comparisons to the other. And a big chunk of that does have to do with the fact that everyone says that they both have this special charm to them. And that's not to be flattering, but it is interesting because both of them are considered very alluring to men and to their victims. And I think both of them are the same seducer type. According to Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction book, there are 9 archetypes of lovers or seducers. And according to the author, once you find out which type you are, you can use it to your advantage in gaining attraction by whoever you're interested in. It's interesting because the book actually calls that person the victim. The whole book.
Who's the victim? I'm sorry.
The person you're trying to seduce.
Is the victim.
The book calls it the victim. Also, according to the book and Robert Greene, and I've paraphrased this for length, let's go over the 9 archetypes of seducers. The siren is defined by highly charged sexual energy. They're almost hypersexual. Everything about them feels like a symbol. The rake. This is the quintessential dangerous bad boy, bad girl seducer. They're mysterious. They've got a lot going on. You never know what they're thinking. The dandy. They embody freedom. Like being around them makes you feel like the sky is the limit. They have no rules in their life, no clothing rules, no body image rules. Everything is so open. The ideal lover. They're your first love type of love. Reminds you of the girl next door. They're almost comforting. You can imagine a life with them. The natural. This type almost has a childlike charm to them. They're naturally spontaneous, open-minded, and they feel blissfully unaware of real-life problems. The coquette. These are the ones that know how to play the game. They know how to push and pull. You never know what they're thinking, and that's their whole appeal. These people have mastered the art of delayed gratification. The charmer. 2 words. Devilish charm. This is the embodiment of Prince Charming. They know how to woo you. The charismatic. Not to be confused with the charmer. The charismatic is just the life of the party. They've got crazy confidence, magnetic energy. They're super animated, and they're really good at influencing people to do what they want. Then lastly, we have type 9, the star. Their reputation precedes them. Everyone thinks highly of them and wants to be around them. They're basically celebrities in whatever field or industry they're in, and they make you want to fight for their attention. But when it comes to Miyuki and Kanai, they're both categorized as seductresses, but a lot of people argue they don't really fit into one of the 9 archetypes. Instead, they fit into the 10th one, Black Widow. They're spiders, by the way. They get their name from a semi-myth that they cannibalize their male mates during reproduction. There are actually 2 types of black widows that do this. After reproduction, the female black widow is exhausted and hungry, and the closest thing to her is the male spider that she just engaged with. So she cannibalizes him. Hence the name Black Widow. The Black Widow name, if you will, has been given to many female serial killers for that same reason, that they cannibalize their lovers, Miyuki and Kanai included. I mean, the categorization makes sense on paper and in theory, but many netizens argued, wait, aren't they too, quote, ugly to be Black Widows? Don't shoot the messenger. Okay, this is a really big topic of discussion online. This is not me stating these things. But I guess when people think of a woman who is able to entrance, seduce, and keep a man so intrigued by her that he's willing to give up all of his money and would end up losing his life because of his love for her, I guess people have a very specific type of woman in mind. And both Miyuki and Kanai, I imagine, did not fit that image. They were both labeled as plus size or, quote, obese by media later. One of them, Miyuki, had a very gummy smile, that's what they called it, and it was not on par with conventional beauty standards in Japan. Miyuki herself said that she got bullied for her smile and teeth in grade school, and nobody wanted to be her friend because of her looks, which is pretty messed up, by the way. But both women are described by netizens of being on the, quote, heavier side, having black hair with short bangs and, quote, droopy eyes. Could they really lure in men and kill them? Robert Greene states in his book, seduction is a game of psychology, not beauty, and it is within the grasp of any person to become a master at this game of seduction. And the art of seduction has 4 phases. And just a quick disclaimer, I'm not saying that this is how anyone should interpret this book, clearly. That's not what I'm saying. Never in a million years. But I'm also not encouraging the use of this book for other things, even like seduction. Personally, I think this book is pretty toxic, and I'm not exactly sure what the purpose would be if you follow the steps in this book. It certainly doesn't seem like the outcome will be love, but it is a fascinating read. I did go by the book's 4 phases, as it's probably the most recognizable system when it comes to seduction, which I think is a big part of today's case. I also think it's interesting to see how the 2 serial killers kind of fit into the system in their own ways, which are undoubtedly very extreme. I also think it's a way to show that these men who fell victim to these women, they're not just some random men who wanted a girlfriend so desperately. They were psychologically manipulated in a very extreme way. Everything these women did was with a purpose. Phase 1 starts with Miyuki breaking into her neighbors' houses as a kid. Okay, not really, but it does lead to phase 1 of seduction, believe it or not. Miyuki was actually born Miyu Lee. She's ethnically Korean, but I believe she's resided in Japan for most of her life. She is a Japanese citizen. And if you left your house door unlocked or a window not tightly closed before leaving for work, ethnically Korean Japanese citizen Gummy Smile Miyuki would be inside of your house. Oh yeah, she just broke into neighbors' houses. She'd be going room to room, browsing, snooping. And she had 2 reasons why she went into people's homes uninvited. The first one is the very obvious one. She wanted to steal valuables, which is odd because her parents were pretty well off. The second one is she just really liked destroying things. I mean, it's one thing to spot out the valuables and take them. It's another thing to go and completely ransack the house even after you've already pocketed the valuables. At this point, you're just trying to mess things up for the sake of it. It's like she got off on the destruction. It was her favorite pastime growing up. And I say that because Miyuki was born, again, like I said, into a pretty financially well-off family. So the fact that she's breaking into her neighbors' houses knowing damn well that this is ruining her entire family's reputation for money, it just doesn't make sense. She already had the money. People said Miyuki had this combination of love for chaos, but also she just wanted attention. Evidenced by her prison blog later, Miyuki was very talkative and she just really wanted someone to listen. Which is fine, but Miyuki was so desperate for classmate approval, she would actually talk about how much of a cool friend she was in hope of making friends. Which is kind of weird. Like, imagine you're talking to someone and all they talk about is how cool it would be if you guys were friends. But you're like, we could just talk about something and become friends. But they're like, no, think about how cool it would be if we were friends. I'm such a good friend. It's really bizarre. So when that didn't work, she started telling all the girls at school how she was just so exhausted. She would come into school, dark circles to her chin. She would yawn and say, so tired, so tired, so sleepy, barely got any sleep. Of course, someone would say, why, Miyuki? Why didn't you get enough sleep? Oh, because I had to sort through all the love letters I was getting from the boys in class again. Yeah, it's just a lot, you know, I mean, like 10-page letters from 10 different guys. And then, of course, I want to be nice. I got to read through them all and sort through them. It's just tiring being such a heartthrob. The other girls would laugh in her face and not a single one of them believed her. And maybe that's where Miyuki learned, you got to pick the right audience. Phase 1, stirring interest and desire. It's also about knowing what kind of seducer you are. And then, according to the book, choosing the right quote, victim that will be interested in you. According to the book, the rules clearly state that you should not chase after someone that won't be open to your advances. Not everyone can seduce everyone. Stick with the people that you know will be interested in you and play with their interest. In this department, Miyuki and Kanai take vastly different approaches. This is like the one part where they're different. Miyuki has this very youthful, almost naive, head in the clouds allure. I'm literally trying everything to avoid saying childlike demeanor, but that's what a lot of people described her as having. Or at least she played into it. She's able to bring out this side of victims who just want to protect her. She seems so emotionally immature and naive. While Kanai was the opposite. She's very motherly. She brings out the side of victims who believed that she was incredible wife material. She made them feel appreciated, cared for, if not almost worshipped. And people wanted a wife like that to build a life with. So let's break it down and start with Miyuki. Miyuki started working at a snack bar. Okay, so like remember how we did whole 2 episodes, one recently and one that was just an audio pod a while back on the life of host and hostess clubs in Japan. It's in the Yandere case that I posted like a month ago or 2 months ago. Now, snack bars are similar yet so different from host and hostess clubs. According to our Japanese translator, a snack bar is kind of like a regular bar, but it might have a theme, like a special theme. And unlike hostess clubs where you have hosts or hostesses sitting down with you, spending time with you, getting to know you, snack bars, they operate kind of like a regular restaurant, like a regular bar. They will serve you your food and drinks, but you're not really going for the food and drinks. Usually you are going for the service that is focused on delivering above and beyond your needs. But they typically don't sit with you. Just think of it as an incredibly well-serviced restaurant, and the themes are usually what pulls people in. So one example is a newer establishment called Muscle Girls. The staff are all women and they're all super buff. They wear leggings and sports bras, and that's the whole appeal. Very muscular women. They'll even play into that and squeeze fresh fruit juice into your cup with their bare hands. They'll push syringes of protein shakes into your mouth. And it's really unique. It's a fun concept, honestly. Or some of the maid and butler cafes could sometimes be categorized as a snack bar. They have a theme of all the workers wearing maid costumes while they run the place. You get it. So it's not necessarily an establishment that you go for like a quick meal or a delicious drink. You're trying to enjoy the whole atmosphere, the experience. Miyuki starts working at a snack bar that primarily hires, quote, heavier women, which... yeah, I mean, who defines that? But I guess they're considered heavier by Japanese conventional beauty standards. But that was considered the, quote, theme of the snack bar, if you will. And yeah, I mean, we don't even have to get into how loaded of a sentence that is. Like, that's crazy. But yeah, she ends up at one of those bars. And at least she knows that the men coming into the bar, they weren't looking for someone that fits the very stereotype conventional beauty standard. And she starts working on seducing them. And Miyuki just kind of has a wild life. She was married 2 times while working at this bar. She had 5 kids total, and she still seduced a ton of guys at the bar. And I'm not saying that as like moms can't be seductive, but more so of where is she finding the time? Like that's crazy. 2 marriages, they were really brief, by the way. But one thing was that she was adamant on when she was divorcing her husband, all she wanted was full custody of her children. Even Miyuki's friends and her family, they were begging her to put up her children for adoption because they didn't think that she had what it takes to raise 5 kids well. But she insisted these are her babies. She will never give them up. But she would prove them right. She refused to cook, clean. She lived in a really run-down, unsanitary home with all 5 kids. And this is not because she couldn't afford something nicer. So let's shame her. That's not the idea. No, she genuinely never picked up a broom in her life. Her walls were caked with mold. The floors were caked with dirt. There were pots and pans laying around that had maggots on them because they had food from weeks ago, just like super glued to the pots. Her definition of throwing something out of the house was walking a few steps and then placing the maggot-filled trash by the front door. Oh my God. Like it was a health hazard. The 5 kids' primary diet consisted of just bland bread and rice balls from the convenience store. It's like the cheapest thing that you can buy, but it's not really nutritious. I mean, there's not a single vegetable in sight. Meanwhile, Miyuki would take all the money that she earned at the snack bar and she would spend it on herself and her coworkers. This is so strange, but she would take her coworkers out to eat and treat them to full sushi dinners, which is pricey. If they tried to pay, she would fight, no, like it's nothing. It's on me. But then she would go home and feed her kids rice balls. Most moms that we know would do the opposite. They would feed their children the best food, but Miyuki was obsessed with that outside validation and praise. You're so kind, Miyuki. You're so rich, Miyuki. Back to Miyuki's clients. Mama, which are bartenders that work at snack bars, aren't known to be super flirtatious bartenders or hosts compared to other establishments, but Miyuki just had a way of sweeping her clients off their feet. It just felt so effortless. She knew the right looks to throw at them. She knew the perfect smile. She knew how to start a conversation with them that focused on them. And I know it sounds very like, well, yeah, duh, that doesn't sound too hard. But she clearly was doing something right. Even after the crimes were exposed, journalists went to go talk to her in prison, and they were shocked by her energy. She's always described in reports as this monstrous serial killer creature, almost sucks the life out of people, which she is, as a serial killer with no remorse, right? But they said when you meet her, and everyone always describes her as being obese in papers, she's so petite, and it must be her energy. Because they're saying, like, technically, I guess medically speaking, she is on the heavier side than the average Japanese person. But something about her energy makes her feel like a little kid that you need to protect her. She feels so frail and petite, like a little baby. That's how they describe it. She's so soft-spoken. She seems so fragile. She almost acts like a perpetual 12-year-old. And for some people, that brings out a side of them that wants to shield her from the reality, like the harshness of this world. Miyuki would purposefully approach middle-aged men at work that seemed lonely. She would flirt with them, put on her charm, and she would insinuate that she would want to meet them outside the snack bar, something that she's not allowed to do, by the way. And once they're captivated by her, they would agree. She would take them to a love motel, they would get intimate, and she would just sink her teeth into these men. One of her exes stated, "I was so shocked. She was so good in bed, I became addicted to her." And it just makes the men sound simple, right? Like they all just want to be intimate with her and like maybe, but ultimately, regardless of her intimate relationships with them, it said that she knew how to make men feel wanted and special. Something that's even more rare in Eastern culture where women are expected to be shy and reserved. She had this very bubbly energy. Side note, a lot of these boyfriends had wives and families. And Miyuki would use that to her advantage. A lot of these men, they loved the idea of being family men. So they prided themselves in being faithful to their wives, faithful and loyal to their family. And anything that goes against that, they're not interested. And you would think maybe if a young hot girl walks by and is like, "Oh my gosh, like look at how hot I am, you could have this." These men would say, "Absolutely not. I have a wife and children." But Miyuki was so slick. She would make the men feel so young again, talking about herself and how she's a hopeless romantic without even involving them in the equation. She would boost up their egos in separate conversations. She would take care of them in ways that made them feel like, wow, this is kind of nice. And she did it all so innocently. Instead of being like, "Oh, you have a wife? I bet she doesn't treat you like this." She only ever spoke highly of her boyfriend's wives, unless they started opening up about the marriage struggles. In one relationship, they literally started this friendly, flirtatious banter by showing each other pictures of their own children. So the married man would show her pictures of his kids, and she would smack his arm flirtatiously and say, "My kids are cuter." And then she would show him pictures of her children. Then he would say, "No, my kids are cuter." He would show other pictures of his kids, and she would say, "They are so cute. But you know, my kids are still cuter." And it feels technically so innocent because he's married and showing off pictures of his children, making it clear that he has a family that he cares about. She's also showing pictures of her children without saying, "Leave your wife and kids for me." But the way they're doing it, it has this flirty banter feel to it. It has this intimate feeling. It's almost like that fate feeling. We're not trying to be nasty. We're just getting along too well. He would end up starting an affair with Miyuki. Kanai, the other serial killer, would take the opposite approach. So instead of having more of that youthful banter, she focused on being the perfect motherly figure. So while Miyuki is playing this, "Oh, I have a troublesome childhood and I'm just a girl," that type of energy, and like this emotional immaturity is being used to make the men feel more masculine, like they're more in charge and like, "Oh, she's too naive to manipulate me. She cannot possibly have those complex thoughts." Kanai, she focused on presenting herself as the ideal wife. She came from a town. Have you guys heard of Hokkaido cream? It's a region in Japan that's famous for their dairy. So like if a product uses milk from this area, they'll write it on the packaging. That's how famous they are for their dairy products. The population of that town is 14,000 people, and there's 120,000 cows in that town. Yeah, so that's where Kanai's from. But I digress. Kanai was forced to learn the piano since she was young, and that kind of kickstarted something in her, where she's like, people are praising her for knowing the piano so well. The piano is such a graceful thing. It's almost like a classy, elegant thing. She seemed to like that praise. So she went on to do pretty well in school, and she was very responsible as a kid. Classmates would say that, yeah, she's pretty mature for her age. And this is not what I'm saying. This is what her classmates are saying. They said that she was, quote, sexually mature for her age. Again, their wording, not mine. One classmate alleged that even in high school, Kanai would talk about how she had this hot boyfriend. And everyone was like, "Well, can we see a picture of your so-called hot boyfriend then?" She whipped out a picture, and sure enough, it's a picture of Kanai and a 40-year-old man. So she was groomed as a minor.
Oh.
And later as an adult, I think this translated into her being hyper aware of what men wanted from her. She presented herself as the perfect ideal. She changed her name to Sakura, which felt younger, more youthful, a little sexier maybe, went on dating websites to scout for a boyfriend. She stated she was a pianist who graduated from Tokyo University and was now studying at Le Cordon Bleu. It's the culinary school for French cuisine, to become a chef. She wanted to open up her own restaurant. These were all half-truths. Her mom was a pianist, and Kanai herself did know how to play, but she wasn't really a pianist. She did get into Tokyo University, but she dropped out because she decided to use her tuition money on luxury goods instead. Le Cordon Bleu, the culinary school, was true. I just don't think that she had any plans of opening up a restaurant. Kanai's ultimate plan was to never work again and dangle herself in front of older men as the perfect wife. And she knew how to cook, to the point where one guy who knew her personally said that when Kanai was arrested for being a serial killer, he felt really sad because, quote, "It's a shame I'll no longer be able to eat another meal from Kanai Kajimi." That's how good she was at cooking. She would even start her own little recipe blog. And of course, every time she would start talking to a new boyfriend, she would send the blog of like, "Oh, have you seen my blog?" Just to be like, look what I can do. Look how I can treat you. That's subliminal messaging. Look what I would love to cook for you every day, 3 meals a day. Don't you want to come home to a home-cooked meal that's hot and ready on the table? One boyfriend said her attention to detail was out of this world. Like, it was exhilarating to be with someone like that. She would wake up every morning before he went to work, made him pasta, fried chicken, pork, and as soon as the ice in his iced coffee started melting, she would replace the ice to not water down his coffee. And he would think to himself, this woman right here, marriage material. So cooking was how she lured a lot of men in. And secondly, she just had a voice that was known to be very sweet and alluring. People said it sounded like a rolling bell. I've never heard of that, but they said it was so smooth and so pretty. It sounds like a chime rolling across the ground. Some said it sounded more like a gasp. Her voice, the way she speaks, it was so graceful. Her whole demeanor, they said it was incredible to watch her in person. So elegant. Another person stated, her voice is so beautiful. Her speaking voice is honestly full of sexiness and elegance that makes it sound like she's gasping and panting for breath every second. This next part is unhinged, but one netizen wrote, even though Kanai is fat and ugly, she is able to become popular with refinement and technique. Which, like, I don't even want to dissect what this netizen is thinking, okay? Her voice would later be described, though, as her ultimate weapon. And that is how both these women would accomplish phase 1 of seduction. And then Miyuki got pregnant with triplets. Oh, yeah.
Wait, Miyuki has 5 kids?
Yeah.
This is 3 more on top of 5.
She told the father of the child, who already had a wife and child, she's like, I'm pregnant and you're going to raise them. He's like, what are you talking about? I can't raise them. I already have my own children, but maybe I can financially help you. And she says, okay, give me $200,000 in child support. He did not have that kind of money. He said maybe he had $66,000. So he gave her that and moved in next door. So he's like, okay, since I can't pay the rest, maybe I can make up with my time. Maybe I can help her sometime with the kids, raise her baby here and there. Miyuki was very serious about being a mom again. She would walk around, hands on her stomach, complaining of backaches. Oh, I can't eat that, I'm pregnant. Oops, gotta take my prenatals. The whole 9 yards. Being pregnant was her whole personality. And then a few months later, that man saw her drinking. And he was like, wait a minute, are you allowed to drink right now? Aren't you pregnant? And she's like, I'm what? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
She's not pregnant.
She's not pregnant. She would legitimately forget that she lied about being pregnant with triplets. She would forget all of her lies. That's how many lies she told. Which brings us to phase 2. Create pleasure and confusion. Keep them in suspense. Have them asking what comes next. Miyuki did that by straight up lying about the most unhinged things. For example, Miyuki would lie about how she dropped out of high school because she got into a fight with a girl who accused her of having a hair perm. She would lie that her parents had cancer and she needed help paying the bills. Sometimes it was that she had heart and kidney issues or that her 5 children were starving, and that was an excuse that she used often. And these men would pay. For example, one of her boyfriends was a garbage worker. She ended up taking around $30,000 from him in total. Garbage collectors in Japan They make around $20,000 a year. He went into debt and lost his job for her. But like, why would these men even keep paying for these things? Some of these men even spent their entire life savings, went into debt to pay Miyuki and Kanai. Why? And they're always being confused by these like push and pull methods, by these lies, by these weird signals. The Art of Seduction literally states that in this phase, phase 2, you should use the demonic power of words to sow confusion, inflame people's emotions with loaded phrases, flatter them, comfort their insecurities, envelop them in fantasy, sweet words, and promises. Not only will they listen to you, they will lose their will to resist you. A lot of this had to do with the fact that providing money to some of these women made the men feel like men. Like they made them feel fulfilled and useful. They're helping someone. They're doing something good. A lot of people hate Kanai with good reason. She's a serial killer. But they will admit that Kanai had a way with words. She knew what busy businessmen wanted to hear. And businessmen were her main targets because they had the most money. She would tell them, "You're so exhausted. You're so tired. You deserve to be treated like a man. You deserve to be greeted at home with a fresh home-cooked meal. I mean, I don't see what's wrong with that." Women these days, they're misguided. And she was willing to do that for them. Kanai would also write about fate when she wrote to her lovers. She wanted it to seem like they're all star-crossed lovers because that gives them a thrill. She would always write about herself as a student in the University of Life, how she just wanted to learn and these men were teaching her so much. She said this to basically every boyfriend. Meanwhile, Miyuki's voice was also described to be nice, but not as nice as Kanai's. But her allure was calligraphy, her penmanship, which is honestly held at a much higher level of respect in Asia than in the Western areas. She would use this to seduce her victims. She had a habit of writing letters to her boyfriends, and they felt more like the ramblings of a high school girl who just had a major crush on a boy. She would even refer to herself in third person to sound extra cutesy. Very much, "Miyuki loves you very, very much. Miyuki hopes you have a good day." Like that. And if she didn't see the men because of their schedules and they didn't match up, she would give them quick 5-minute phone calls. Not to ask them to come to the snack bar, not to ask for something, just, "Oh, I was just thinking about you and I wanted to make sure your day's going well." So even if these guys thought at first, well, she works at the bar, of course she's going to be nice to me, she wants to make money, she would disarm them with her constant displays of affection, because constant open displays of affection has a connection to emotional immaturity.
And the men like that.
Men feel like they are the ones in power and this girl is too emotionally immature to ever be able to manipulate them. So they become more vulnerable around them. If she was hanging out with her boyfriends and one of them kept rolling their neck side to side in the middle of a conversation, she would take note of it, not mention it that day, but the next day she would have ointment for his neck ready for him. She just behaved like a little girl in love, sending letters, leaving voicemails, and all of it was just master manipulation. Because once she earned the trust of these men, she would start gaslighting and exploiting them. One of Miyuki's boyfriends, Shinichi, was over it. He was getting beat with a frying pan on a daily basis now. Yeah, he was done.
Like actually, physically?
Physically. The Miyuki he met had fallen in love with the charismatic girl, the childish little girl. Gone, okay? Every time they see each other now, she's beating him up with a frying pan. She would try to throw boiling water on him, on his body. And continuously, she would say, "Give me your money." It was really confusing. Like, what happened to that person he knew? But this is the breaking point when she tied him up with rope. He had no idea what she was going to do when he was all tied up. So they end up getting into this fight. She ties him up with rope. He's genuinely terrified for his life. And the next chance he gets, he runs off and hides at his parents' house to get away from her. But she finds him, breaks into his parents' house, and kidnaps her boyfriend Shinichi back. All the while, the parents are just watching in pure terror in their own home as their son is being kidnapped. Which is phase 3. Phase 3, according to the book, is deepening the effect through extreme measures. This is the stage that the book recommends mixing pleasure with straight up pain. Not physical pain, but emotional and mental pain. This is when you take the, quote, victim past their limits, getting them to act out their dark sides, and it adds a sense of danger to the seduction, and it ultimately deepens the spell that they're under.
Yeah, this book sounds very questionable, huh?
Robert Greene, I think he's an light years ahead in terms of intelligence compared to little old me. But I will say His books are very intense. The 48 Laws of Power is actually banned in most prisons in the US because it's just, it's too much. Some people applaud him and say that he gets down to the nitty gritty, un-rosy tinted views of human psychology. Other people say that he's just creating guidelines on how to be toxic people. I actually think it's better to talk about this book so that if you know what's happening and someone's doing this to you, it's better than to be like, oh, I don't know what's going on, but I'm feeling very confused by this relationship. I always think it's better to know if there's things that guys or women are out there reading and they're trying to seduce you. I always think that's, you know, the whole pickup artist phase. I think it's interesting to watch them because if you're a single woman, they could be using these tricks on you and you want to be alert and aware of that. Versus like not knowing, then you don't know what's happening. You just think, oh, this person's kind of hot and cold and I don't understand them. So very interesting, very intense. Now, again, Miyuki clearly is very extreme, but I think even this part of the book, again, like I said, not recommended. It's toxic, morally questionable. This is basically saying you've come to phase 3 where you can be as manipulative and as demanding as you want because you've already gotten your quote victim to the point where they can put up with more extreme behavior. In Miyuki's case, she would even get her children involved in the process. She would find men that were desperate for some sort of acceptance and love, and then she would tell her kids to make them feel special by calling them dad and treating them like he was their biological father.
Wow,
it's so twisted.
She is on another level.
It made a lot of these men feel needed in their lives. It gave them purpose. You know, it's heartwarming to see your significant other's kids love you and want to be with you and take care of you. They would start dropping them off at school because Miyuki would come up with some random excuse on why she couldn't. Or honestly, the kids would just go up to him and be like, Daddy, can you take me to school tomorrow? I want to spend time with you. Guess what? Miyuki probably told them to say that. Other times she would convince the men to fork over money for the kids or even a key to their apartment, which very conveniently, after Miyuki got a key to a lot of the boyfriend's places, they would be ransacked. Yeah. If any of the men tried to pull away from Miyuki, she would have her kids text them by saying things like, Dad, I love you. Please come back. Why aren't you here anymore, Daddy? It made them feel utterly guilty. One of her boyfriends said Miyuki turned children into bone broth, which of course she probably didn't, but it's a way of saying she genuinely did not care about anyone but herself. Like she's willing to use her children, it seems, to get what she wanted, and that was money.
Maybe that's why she wanted to keep all of them.
Perhaps. She was relentless about money. Her boyfriends would not only give up their entire life savings, but they would go into debt to pay her money. And even that wasn't enough. She made her boyfriends watch her own children for her. Which, like I said, by the way, she's getting more money. She's not spending it on her kids. They still eat the same nutritionless food, living in the same conditions that absolutely had to break some sort of health code for human life. Yet, Miyuki was seen blowing tons of money on herself. She would drop hundreds of dollars on dinners with coworkers or whoever she wanted to be friends with. She still had that desperate need for acceptance by her peers. She would take people to public baths like sauna houses. She would buy people kimonos, treat them to haircuts. If something was expensive, she would exclaim, "Oh, that's so cheap," while purchasing it. It was weird. It's like she wanted to impress even the sales associates. Sometimes she went to the convenience store to stock up on snacks, dropping like hundreds of dollars each time. What's so interesting is that a lot of people would assume that these two women would have an obsession with luxury goods, right? I mean, they're willing to do wild, crazy things for money. They must be obsessed with Gucci, Prada, Chanel. They must be like those crazy gold digger women. They actually spent all their money on random things. Miyuki would spend so much money at the convenience store and on her coworkers that she later said she hated. And Kanai would spend $15,000 a month, and she would just spend it on stuff for her Shih Tzu, her random pets. She would buy them like these random pet gadgets at the pet store that nobody needs, like a pet massager for hundreds of dollars that really doesn't work. Nobody needs it. Who's buying it? She never spent a lot of money on designer clothes, but her hangers. Like she wore very affordable clothing, but she would buy hangers that were very fancy and $10 a piece. $10 one hanger. That's the price of whatever you're probably hanging. She would go on these trips to hot springs, golf trips, and of course, she spent a ton of money on cooking classes. And Kanai was really good at picking her victims. She would go for men that were older, and she would sell them the dream of her being a chef that opens up her own restaurant one day. And they were more likely to help her because they're getting old, they're financially better off, and the one thing that they can't have is that time and excitement again. So they want to vicariously live through her. You know, I saw a video essay recently on this is kind of a tangent, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. And a lot of people thought it was confusing how Jeff Bezos, after his divorce, started dating Lauren Sanchez. People thought they just didn't really work on paper. But everybody that knows Lauren Sanchez in person said that she is almost like a kid with how excited she gets about everything. She's so animated. She's like the life of the party. If you buy her a present, she's probably the type to like run around the room over a small gift coming from a billionaire where it's like 0.0000% of his wealth, you know? But it's just... Kanai's kind of playing into that. They're vicariously living through her. And she knew that and she's honing in on it. These men, they're too old. They've got too many rules in their life, too many crazy professions to actually chase after their dreams. But when they watch Kanai do it, which are all lies, by the way, she had no dreams of working, they would get excited again. They would feel youthful again. And phase 4, as stated in the book, is moving in for the kill. The book states, if your victim is to be sacrificed, then it must be done swiftly and cleanly, leaving you free, physically and psychologically, to move on to the next victim, and then the game begins all over again. Clearly, this is meant to be interpreted as, if you're no longer going to be with this victim that you've spent all this time and energy seducing, break up with them, make it clean and swift, and then you get to move on. But that's clearly not what serial killers Miyuki and Kanai had in mind. May 13th, 2004, a train running on the Inbi line slammed into something and came to a halting stop. Police are called to the scene, and they find a box on the train tracks. Inside the box was a 42-year-old reporter's body. The man worked for a reputable newspaper, had a wife and kids, and now his completely battered body was found in a cardboard box on the train tracks.
Is he passed already or... Okay,
he passed from the train hit. There was a note at the bottom of the box and it read, I was supposed to protect her, but I was doing the opposite. I was happy to meet a woman like Miyuki. When I met Miyuki, I learned what true love was. Miyuki is not his wife's name. To the police, this just sounded like a man who had an affair, could not live with himself, so he exited his life. And exiting via jumping in front of a train is pretty common in Japan, so they didn't think much of it. In Japan, about 600 people a year exit by jumping in front of a train, while in the US, about 300 to 500 people do that, which doesn't sound alarming until you factor in the population size. Japan has about a third of the US's population, so the number of self-exits by train in Japan is alarming. I mean, I think in both countries it's alarming, but more so in Japan. It's so prevalent that the Japanese have created a word for it. In a really weird, sad fact, but a lot of train companies will actually charge families of those that exit. They will charge them a large fine because the person that exited caused a public disturbance and inconvenience, which is highly, highly frowned upon in Japanese culture. So there's that. Miyuki has never been officially convicted of the reporter's murder, but in hindsight, netizens think it's weird that the police didn't investigate or even perform an autopsy. This is the first death associated with Miyuki, and it's just strange. So we're to believe that this reporter grabbed a box, threw it onto the train tracks, jumped down, then curled up in there, somehow managed to close the box up well enough, and then quietly waited in anxiety for the train to come and just like listen to it approaching. Usually exits are known to be impulsive. This feels like a very long time to sit with your thoughts. And it's very morbid, but it just doesn't make sense. It feels incredibly unnatural for someone to do this, psychology-wise. Now in hindsight, netizens believe that Miyuki drugged him, put his unconscious body in the box, threw the box onto the tracks when no one was around, and now she was free to start on her next victim. Even though Miyuki would be found guilty of killing 2 men, she's suspected of killing upwards of 6. She was never convicted for the reporter in the box. Her next few victims, it just seemed like all of Miyuki's love interests, they all started passing away. One victim was found with 4 different types of sleeping pills in their system and drowned in like 3 inches of water on the beach, which again doesn't seem like a self-chosen exit, but the police would argue that it was. Another ex was found dead in a forest. The police ruled it a self-chosen exit. The victim in the forest was actually a police officer that she had managed to seduce. Another drowned at sea while they went diving for shells. The family thought it was suspicious because he didn't know how to swim, but it was deemed a natural death. Another one was found dead in a river, which again is wild to me that police didn't think of Miyuki at this point because he also had 3 to 4 different types of sleeping pills in his system. There was evidence of assault on his face and clothes. He had a visible head wound and his right eye was completely sunken in. You could see the bones in his fingers, but the police argued that was the work of crabs. Another boyfriend of Miyuki's was found dead in his apartment. He reported to neighbors before his passing that he was feeling unwell and he had been unconscious for 3 days and he passed away a few days later. There is a 7th victim that some sources mention and some don't, but it's a barbershop worker who started dating Miyuki and he divorced his wife. He self-exited, allegedly. He wrote a note that read, "I'm happier being deceived than deceiving." As for Kanai, when she entered phase 4, she had been able to defraud men out of $2.5 million at this point. And when that wasn't enough, they just started plopping dead around her. Yeah, her 70-year-old boyfriend was found naked and dead in his shower. No cause of death was determined for him. Because of his age, authorities just assumed that he passed naturally. Then another boyfriend of Kanai's ended up dead with 6 shichirin. I think I'm saying that right, but it's basically mini charcoal stoves to cook barbecue meat. Weird side note, Ariana Grande has a tattoo. She did, I think she covered it up, that read 7 rings, because her song 7 Rings, right? Mm-hmm. But 7 rings in Japan, the characters actually put together mean shichirin, which is barbecue grill. So I guess people were making fun of people who get separate language tattoos. Like, you know how people get Chinese tattoos or Japanese tattoos and they don't ask a native speaker of that language what this means. Yeah. So she meant 7 rings for her song, but it ended up meaning barbecue charcoal grill. Huh. It was like a whole thing, but this is the barbecue charcoal grill. And Kanai, she would allegedly be a master stager. So most of her victims, they were staged to have exited their life through carbon monoxide via these charcoal grills. She would get away with this multiple times. And then finally, one of her boyfriends was found dead in his car with a charcoal barbecue grill burning in the front passenger seat. This would be the one that caught Kanai. The charcoal grills were all from the same brand, by the way. But the most curious thing about this is that the keys to the car were not found inside the car. So the police are like, how did he drive the car to the parking lot to do this? And like, there would be no logical reason for him to say, you know what, let me get out of the car and chuck my keys somewhere random and then run back to the car. There weren't even matches found in the car. None, not even a used one. His hands had no charcoal powder on them at all. So who lit the grill? And I'm talking like the charcoal briquettes. You know what I'm talking about? You touch them once, your hands are going to have powder. Kanai was actually arrested in her home that she shared with her boyfriend. She had moved in with one of her boyfriends at the time. And he was genuinely so taken aback that his lovely wife, soon-to-be wife, chef, girlfriend, fiance, was getting arrested. Later, when he was told by officers, hey, we think she's murdering and defrauding her lovers, he was like, you guys are mistaken. This is a good woman we're talking about. After vouching for his girlfriend's death, he went home and curiously noticed that all 7 fire alarms in his ceilings had vanished. They were gone. I think that's when he was like, oh, okay, yeah, that was probably going to be me next. The killers were arrested 4 months apart. Miyuki was arrested November 2nd, 2009 for fraud, not even murder, fraud. When police started investigating her for fraud, they realized, wow, this woman has a lot of people around her dying. And most of them are found with large amounts of sleeping pills in their system. And what's odd is she's got a large amount of sleeping pills in her purse, which is really weird because it's not one of those things where you're like, wait a minute, I got to stockpile sleeping pills in my bag that I take out every day because who knows, I might need sleeping pills while I'm out running errands. It's very odd. What's even more odd is the sleeping pills weren't even prescribed to her. According to neighbors, Miyuki would go door to door at night begging for some sort of sleeping pill. 3 a.m., she's like, I can't do it. I'm losing my mind. My prescription ran out. I'm an insomniac. Can I please get a few sleeping pills? My doctor's office won't take me until like 3 days later. Can I just get like 3 or 4? She did this like every night to different neighbors. And what's interesting is in Japan, you can get tickets for trials. Miyuki's trial created so much media buzz that over 1,100 people waited for hours trying to get tickets into the courtroom. Everyone wanted to see what was going to happen to her. Miyuki denied involvement in all the deaths and stated that the man she was dating at the time, her boyfriend, was the one that killed everyone out of jealousy. She said that she had no idea that he was doing any of this. In the end, Miyuki had been linked to at least 6 murders, but she was only convicted of 2. She received the death penalty, which of course she tried to appeal but was rejected. She was going to be housed at the Hiroshima Penitentiary while on death row. Kanai was indicted for murder on February 22nd, 2010, which her trial was just bizarre. She stated that one of her boyfriends just exited his life because he was really sad that they were thinking of breaking up. And the authorities were like, well, why were you guys thinking of breaking up? And she said, well, he thought that I wasn't good enough in bed. She was convicted of 3 murders, but suspected of killing at least 7 men. She was also sentenced to the death penalty, which she later tried to appeal, but was rejected. She was going to be housed at the Tokyo Penitentiary while on death row. So these 2 women, they're not even in the same prison. Which, side note, Kanai would later have a huge complaint about her trial. She said she hated the way that the courtroom artists depicted her in the courtroom drawings. She said that all they did was emphasize her as being the bigger person in a very unnatural way compared to the judges and prosecutors. She said it felt like they were trying to emphasize her obesity. She was very displeased and stated it caused her incredible distress during the trial. She at one point even asked followers, because she had some fans, I guess, to send drawings that they had of her. So if that there was a second trial, she could bring them in and they could create better, prettier looking sketches of her. In Japan, prisoners don't know the date of their execution until the day of. Actually, they don't know until a few hours before. And families of the executed don't even know until they're gone. It's actually been a topic of hot debate. Most countries that still carry out the death penalty, like the US, typically they have a set planned date for execution so that inmates and their families can mentally prepare for it to some degree. Japan lets you know like 60 minutes beforehand. There's actually a reasoning behind it. Back when Japan used to tell you the date of your execution like the other countries, they found that a lot of death row inmates were choosing to self-exit. So they changed it to 1 or 2 hours before so that you would not have the time to self-exit. The UN Committee Against Torture has previously criticized Japan for the psychological strain that this leaves on inmates and their families. And it's kind of wild. So they tell the inmates 1 or 2 hours beforehand. They bring the inmates into a highly surveilled isolation cell. Their coffin has arrived this morning and the prison guards have already set everything up. They place handcuffs on the inmate, bring them into the execution room where they're told to step on a giant X marks the spot. A white bag is placed over their head and they tie a rope around their neck. 3 guards exit the room and simultaneously push buttons, 1 each. So a total of 3 buttons, but they don't know which button is the deadly one. And then it releases the gallows trap. So like Squid Game, the floor pops open and the inmate falls down into the room below. It's a full suspension death. That room has a glass wall where the inspector and warden can observe and confirm the execution. A lot of inmates on Japan's death row have complained that this adds so much psychological pain and anxiety from not knowing when their lives are coming to an end. But those who support the death penalty, and again, I'm not stating my opinion, those who support the death penalty have stated, well, victims of crimes also don't know when they're going to die because it's not really a choice they made. So some people are for it, some people are really against it. So both Miyuki and Kanai journaled about it and they started blogs in prison, which like 2 things about that. They're so similar. And also you can start a blog in prison. Miyuki had a section in the local monthly paper called Paper Bomb. Her section was called From the Hiroshima Detention Center. She would do a monthly column about what she was thinking about, what she was eating, everything about her life in prison. And she would also try to convince people that she was innocent. She would also invite reporters to come visit her to write articles on her crimes. And one thing that reporters noted about her was she still cared so much about what people thought about her. And she hated the fact that people thought that she was sleeping with clients while she was working at the snack bar. She was in jail for killing several people, but it seemed like she was more occupied on the rumors that she was going to karaoke bars with some of her clients after work. She would also go on these long tangents about how all of her friends were so desperate that they were doing everything in their power to try and get her out of prison. Most journalists knew that she had no friends, that they did not exist, but she was creating them in her head to give herself something to look forward to. She also told reporters not to talk to any of the girls that worked at the snack bar because they always, quote, told lies. And the people that live near her, her neighbors, they're not credible either because they're on welfare. But she wanted her blog to segue into an autobiography about her life. So Masumi had written a book in prison and it had kind of humanized her, I guess, in a way. And Miyuki wanted that for herself. She wanted to show her, quote, human side, her nonviolent side, to reveal the truth to the world that the trial was unfair. She felt like this was her ticket out of death row. What's so interesting is that when Kanai was arrested a few months after Miyuki actually sympathized with Kanai. She hated the fact that the media focused so much on Kanai's looks, just like they had done with her. People were talking about how it was impossible, like not feasible to ever think that so many men were so attracted to these women. People were being disgustingly fat phobic, and they straight up said these women were too ugly to commit these types of crimes. Miyuki was on Kanai's side. And Kanai, she seemed to be okay with Miyuki until she reads a book in prison about Miyuki's crimes. The book is called Moth Attracting Lantern, Totally Suspicious Deaths. It was written by a reporter named Osamu Aoki. Kanai had the world's biggest one-way crush on this reporter, Osamu. She would write in her blog about him nonstop, about how she doesn't think that he's in a relationship right now. I mean, not that any of that information was made public, but she would dissect random articles that he wrote to be like, see, this is why that I don't think that he's in a committed relationship, which means he's single, which means I have a chance with him. She would continue to compliment him on her blog about his long, smooth, straight, slightly gray hair. She would talk about how it suits his face frame so well and how excited she would be if someone that handsome ever came to visit her in prison and interview her. She said she would be thrilled even just being able to look at him all day. She thought nobody was as passionate as Osamu when it came to justice. But when that book on Miyuki's crimes was released, she thought, did he choose Miyuki over me? I'm shocked. I've lived my whole life without ever being jealous of another person until today. I am furiously jealous. The only comfort was a detail that Osamu called Miyuki a, quote, plain and dull middle-aged woman. So Kanai, the reasonable, ever-logical, completely normal, understanding person that she is, wages war on serial killer Miyuki through her blog. They're not even in the same prison. Kanai had a blog post where she wrote, I think Miyuki is an idiot. I think so. No matter what the great Osamu asked her, she kept evading the question. If she didn't want to answer the question, she should have just refused his interview. She doesn't understand how lucky she is to have a talented journalist who is willing to listen to a defendant's story without passing judgment on someone. She is a huge, huge idiot. I am so mad. It was a big mistake that she was even chosen by the Mr. Aoki. She doesn't understand the pain that the ones that have reported on my case, they were all a bunch of freelance writers. You know, I thought about that and I cried. Well, a woman like Miyuki, she's not just going to lay down and get shot. She starts hitting back. She would talk to reporters agreeing to help them write stories on her, but she would only do so if they promised that they would never, never, ever talk to serial killer Kanai. She once cut a reporter out of her life, one of the closest relationships she developed in prison, because she randomly started suspecting him of also trying to do a story on Kanai. If you ever brought up Kanai, she would get angry, but she would try to rein in her anger because at the end of the day, you're a reporter and she cares about what people think about her. And she would just blurt, I think she insults people too much. I can't stand her style of looking down on people. I even feel sorry for her, so filled with hatred. Sometimes if a reporter would bring up Kanai, they would see Miyuki's temper flash for a second, almost like, what did you just say? That's how she would look at them. But then she would smile and become passive-aggressive. I don't want you to compare me to her. She and I are different people. Even if she's a different person, it feels like we're almost different humans. It's not that there's anything wrong with her, and I don't want to discriminate. I just don't think we're the same.
You know, these evil people, they've been getting around in their life, manipulating others, getting their own ways in life. Now they meet another similar character. They can't do that to each other, so they just despise and hate each other for that.
It also reminds me of, it feels like they're both looking in a mirror and they hate it. Like they're facing reality. Like they hate each other so much, but they're identical.
Right. They probably put themselves on a pedestal, and then now they look at someone else that's like, yes.
Yeah, but it's like, no, that's exactly who you are. But they just don't want to face that reality. And the reporter would ask, are you talking about Kanai's appearance? Like, what discrimination are you saying? Well, I think Miss Kanai had her way of living, as do I. I want people to seriously come to terms with how she lived and how it was different from me. Then she would promptly end the interview, thank the reporter, leave the visiting area, and never contact them ever again. Kanai would hit back and write blog post after blog post, insinuating that Miyuki was trying to date reporters that she spoke to. She wrote, Miyuki, you seem to enjoy being interviewed in the papers, on TV, and in the magazines. No matter the platform, but is there anyone in the press that you're dating that truly understands you? She was trying to imply that no one in the media actually cares for Miyuki, and she's just a dumb little girl that thinks they do. She also took a dig at Miyuki by stating that she doesn't even know what she did. She was like, I don't even know about your crimes until the great Osamu wrote a book on you. Yeah. Either way, Kanai stated that she felt bad for Miyuki for being used by these reporters, and she felt so sorry for her for spending so much of her useless time catering to them. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy. They're taking passive-aggressive digs at each other, and you have to constantly remember, these are serial killers on death row. Side note, throughout all of this, Osamu never engaged in conversations with Kanai. In fact, he flat out told other reporters when asked about this, he said, I'm not interested. But when they kept asking about Kanai, what do you think of Kanai? He stated that she did deplorable things and she was a very intelligent woman. And that was enough for Kanai to stay hopeful in their non-existent relationship. What's wild is Kanai actually gained a few fans through her absolutely unhinged prison blog. One netizen had even gone to her trial, saw her in person, and stated, Kanai is a goddess playing the role of a villain. Some of them would even bring her butter from her hometown, Hokkaido. And then, on January 14th, 2023, so this year, Miyuki's last words were, "You can't just eat ramen," before she died choking on her stir fry.
What?
It's almost too horribly ironic to even mention, but Miyuki was 49 years old when she died. And let me explain. We don't actually know if these were her last words, but these were her last recorded known words. A reporter came to visit Miyuki, and she was asking the reporter about what kind of food he enjoyed. And he stated that he basically lives off of ramen, kind of like a college student. And she scolded him saying, "You can't just eat ramen." And then visitor time was over. She went to her prison mealtime where she choked and died on noodles.
What?
The last meal Miyuki had was rice, yakisoba, grilled fish, miso soup, and veggies. Some sources say that she also had fried ham potato salad and spaghetti salad. Most people agree that yakisoba was the culprit to her death. Yakisoba is a stir-fried noodle dish with a sweet and savory sauce, kind of like a chow mein, I guess, if you had to make a comparison. Yeah. I mean, Miyuki always did have health conditions that she was born with, so she was more susceptible to choking on her food. But there are some online rumors that the prison kitchen, which is run by inmates, always gave her intentionally really dry food in hopes of killing her. Because I guess everyone hated her for being a serial killer. And she does objectively have a very annoying personality, is what a lot of people stated. Her whole, well, they're on welfare. She seems very passive-aggressive. It's rumored that they would specifically give her barley rice instead of white rice because barley rice is drier and harder to swallow, especially if you already have issues with your esophagus, which Miyuki did. There's no evidence of this, but it's interesting. Some netizens were also upset that Miyuki was never executed. They felt cheated out of their taxpayer money. They felt like we paid for her to stay alive so that she could be executed by the state, but then she just died. So why did we pay so much money to keep her alive? And then some people went the other extreme and felt like what she did was wrong, but she didn't deserve to be demonized. They felt like the media was painting her out to be this person who hated her kids, but maybe she was actually good to her kids and she used that money on her kids.
What?
They got this from just like random interviews Miyuki did where she talked about how she loved being a mother. But I don't think...
Yeah, you can. She's a charmer. Like, she can say whatever she wants to say.
And like, I think when it comes to being a parent, I get that it's hard and people make mistakes, but she was like a really bad parent, like just continuously a horrible parent. So I don't think anything she says, like, think about what her kids went through. We can't just sympathize with people because they're parents. I mean, again, that's not my viewpoint on the death penalty. That's my viewpoint on not sympathizing with her. So many netizens believe Miyuki was a victim of society. Yeah. But an interesting end is, no matter how much these women hated each other, I think that they're just looking in a mirror and seeing all the worst things about themselves and having to face that reality. And it's just interesting. One Twitter user said, if you look up Kanai, then Miyuki pops up. If you look up Miyuki, Kanai pops up. And it seems like they will never be able to escape this comparison game.
Wow.
And this is the story of how two of Japan's most notorious, most hated female serial killers despise each other in prison. What are your thoughts? Leave it in the comments, and I will see you guys on Sunday for the mini-sode. Bye.